If you'd like to hear any lore, and I mean any lore at all, make sure you're in the Discord. Once a week, I'll ask a question. First person to get the question right gets to pick lore for the week, and this week it is the Scourge. So, I don't think I've ever actually covered a war, technically. Like, we've talked about the Hoover Dam conflict and whatnot, but this is a Brotherhood war. This is the Scourge that is the Brotherhood of Steel, moving from the west to the east, and the inhabitants of the Pitt. So the Scourge is I'm getting all of my lore off of fallout.fandom.com. The Scourge is a term often used by the Pitt's inhabitants to refer to the battle, the mop-up operations conducted by the Brotherhood of Steel before their arrival in Washington, D.C. When I get through all of this, I'll read some quotes. Now, on their way to the capital wasteland, the Brotherhood forces came across the ruins of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, a truly chaotic city. It was full of gangs, raiders, slavers, and many other kinds of horrors that freely terrorized the few innocents. In a single night, the Brotherhood swept through the city from their staging area at Mount Wash and eliminated any resident who put up a fight. The aftermath of all this being Lyon's contingent left the city with approximately 20 children in tow who would later be initiated into the Brotherhood of Steel. Most were recruited into the Brotherhood by 2277. Only one remained stationed at the Citadel, Greg Bear, who was nicknamed Kodak. He's stationed with Lyon's Pride. Now, when asking Kodak about it, he says, when you ask Kodak about the Scourge, he said, now that's a story. The only reason I'm here is because of Elder Lyons. You see, I grew up in the Pit. Don't suppose you've ever been there, huh? It's about 500 clicks. 3 irradiated rivers coming together. People there were not well, but the Brotherhood of Steel came down on the place with a righteous hammer. They called it the Scourge. During the Scourge, Lyon's forces suffered only one casualty, the initiate of Ishmael Asher, who was buried in the rubble during the fight and presumed dead. He survived and subsequently established firm control of the Pit, transforming it into an industrial powerhouse supported by the Brotherhood technological know-how. Having fully abandoned the Brotherhood and its teachings, Asher recognized the inherent failure of the unsustainable scavenger nature of the faction ways and moved forward in his own direction. Raiders such as Werner recount how the area used to be much worse before the Brotherhood cleaned up the city, slaughtering half of the violent residents. He explains that due to the actions of the Brotherhood, the threats were significantly pacified or eliminated, allowing Asher to extend control over the city to begin with. The Lone Wanderer can ask Werner, how did the city get started? And Werner will reply with, after the war, this place just turned into a shithole. The buildings started falling over and the sickness makes people just turn on each other. Some of them change. They lose any sense of who they are. They just go around killing and fucking and eating like animals, man. Some people are still okay, but just, I don't know. Anyway, about 30 years ago, the Brotherhood guys come in and wipe the place out. They kill all of these sick fucks. Anything that looks like it's gonna fight, bam. And then they take whatever they're looking for and they leave. The Lone Wanderer can say, that's awful. How could the Brotherhood do that in reference to the Scourge? He said, normally that would get you a crack across the jaw, but since you don't know what the Pit is like, I'll let it go. I still have nightmares about the place 30 years and how many horrors later, and the Pit is still the worst thing I've ever seen. It was ugly. It was ugly work, sure. Questionably moral, no doubt, but there was no other choice. The city had to go. So, in the official game guide, which I do have, it's not on screen, but I do have, Kyle gave it to me. Thanks, Papa.
Yeah.
It says, from the Game of the Year edition, page 34 and 44, in 2242, Star Paladin Lyons of the Brotherhood of Steel led the Scourge, a large military-scale action that wiped out nearly the entire population of the Pit. In a single night, the Brotherhood swept through the city, eliminating any resident who put up a fight. Although the intent of the Scourge remains unclear, several unmutated children were taken from the Pit by the Brotherhood and placed into initiate training. The motivations for the Scourge are unclear to this day, but many Brotherhood note it was a marked change in the way the Brotherhood operates. Additionally, it is known that something was recovered from the Pit during the Scourge. although to date it would seem that only Elder Lyons knows what it is. It is said that a Brotherhood of Steel paladin from the Scourge stayed on in the pit, seeking to bring law and order to the unwashed masses, and creating an underclass of pit slavers in the process. Guarded by pit raiders under his personal command. However, in the decades following the event of the Scourge, nobody had heard anything from the pit. Travelers who had gone to investigate have not returned, and no survivors have emerged. So that's the Scourge. I wish we knew a little more about it. I wish there was a way to find out what Elder Lyons had. I want to know what like the actual idea for it was, and I know the official guides that come out normally don't really correlate or correspond with what's going. Like, there's always typos and mess ups and what have you. But I wonder if maybe Asher stood behind and lied. I never even thought to like look into it. Like, I just read, oh yeah, he was trapped. But maybe he said he was going to stay behind and just grew mad with power. It makes sense. That's kind of the theme of the entire series, is like what happens when you have too much power. Other than that, that's the Scourge. Thank you to Mr. Tom Flood for picking it out. And that's lore.